inspiring words.
Thanks indeed, Father. Our first speaker is Dr. Rita O'Connor. And Dr. Rita is a GP, and she has worked, an awful lot of her time has been spent doing voluntary work in post-abortion counselling to women. She has a great love for Our Lady, and you only have to engage in conversation with her for a couple of minutes to realise that. And tonight she's going to speak to us about the apparitions of Our Lady of Guadalupe and the wonderful science that has been covered in relation to that terrific miracle and terrific event, particularly in the last century and in this century as well. So you're very welcome, Dr. Rita. We're delighted to have you, and take it away.
Thank you so much. Yes. Sorry, yes, sorry. Yeah. I just unmuted it. Okay. So good evening, everyone, and I'm delighted to be here to speak to you. And I think I'm grateful to the Legion of Mary for asking me to do this talk. I have for many years, maybe over 20, a great love for Our Lady under this title of Our Lady of Guadalupe. And I think it's through this title that I grew in this love for her. And I had the opportunity of being at the first time she came to Ireland, to say, with Judge Dan Lynch. He took a missionary image on a tour of Ireland, and I went to Clonlara at that time, and so it left a big impression on me. And then subsequently we had a big march in Dublin with her image, and I came very close in front of her, and I had an experience of her presence which really touched my heart. And then from that I went on to do consecration to Mary and to devotion to her as well under Rudy Montfort devotion. And so I can't tell you how I fell in love with her, right? There's no doubt I did. And I think that anybody who hears the story of Our Lady of Guadalupe and studies it would, in fact, be really touched by it because of the beauty of her words and the tenderness and the love she showed. And because she didn't ask them for anything in Mexico and Guadalupe, she just came to give them something, to give them love, to offer her compassion, to offer her protection and help. And so she didn't ask, I know that we have to respond to her requests for prayer, but she didn't actually ask them. It was just beautiful. You could just come and get to know her and love her and just feel the warmth of her support and presence. And so I thought I would just quote a few lines from the founder of the Legion of Mary, who wrote an article, 8 pages in fact, it's a magazine, Voice of the Legion of Mary, 2015, edition 4. If anyone wants to look it up, it's wonderful. It's wonderful. If I just read it all out, it was beautiful. But I read a couple of lines from it. And he says that this image is not sufficiently known in this side of the world. And I'll just quote from him. Yet it is something which stands for one of the greatest supernatural interventions of all time. And then he goes on to say to us that surely then devotion to Our Lady of Guadalupe should receive more attention than it does. So, and so I was really amazed when I found this back issue of the Voice of the Legion of Mary, and studied what he's saying. And so what really is, I suppose what's really we're saying is that this, when Our Lady came to Mexico, and we see a whole culture transformed from a culture of death to a culture of life, where people who have in opposition to each other, in conflict, in racial tensions, to acceptance of each other, to respecting each other's dignity, and to a culture of life and a culture of love, and a conversion of a whole nation, 9 million in about equally the same number of years. Although Frank says 7 years, they were all converted in 7 years. And it's an extraordinary story, also a story of the lay people, and both lay people, which are really called into the ministry, and the apostolate, and the Franciscans at that time. They were the first missionaries. Later there was Augustinians and Dominicans as well. They were part of this huge change and baptism, the conversion. So anyhow, I have some slides prepared for you, and we'll start just to give you a background of the culture that was there before the apparition, and then just to show you the interaction between Our Lady and Juan Diego, and just to get you get a feel of that beautiful interaction and the message, from this image. Yeah. So, and my son is just going to set up for me the PowerPoints. Yeah, thank you.
Dr. Rita, can I just ask if maybe you speak up a little bit louder, if that's okay?
Okay, yes, okay, I'll try. Yes,
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Can you see me that now? Can you see?
That's
Yes?
perfect.
You can see. So, okay. I'll do my best to speak a bit louder, I know. So we're looking here at a culture that it was with a lot of human sacrifice. In fact, it didn't exist, I think, in any other pagan culture, the number of victims that were sacrificed. And they would say there would be 50,000 per year. And some historians say it would be more. It would be as close to 100,000 per year. And so they had to engage in wars to find these victims. So they call them the flower wars. Now they also sacrificed children because they, which is a very sad part of say what happened. It could even be, some historians said 1 in 5 children. So so you see, they believed that it was necessary for the universe to continue in existence, that the sun would get weakened, that they just had to do this, that it was demanded of them. Yes. And so they had a very, to us, a very cruel way of causing the death of these victims and offering to God. They took their hearts and they offered them into their gods, false gods. So, so into this culture now, let's go on to the next slide. Oh, John? Sorry, it should go on the next slide. Yeah, it did, okay, yeah. So, that was just prior now to the conquest. So that I was sharing to you about. So then the conquest started, and Hernandez Cortez, he came with a fleet of ships in 1519, and within 2 years he had conquered Mexico. And then it was just only 2 years later the missionaries, Franciscans, started to arrive, and they had hoped that they could actually evangelize the Mexican Indians and the Aztecs, and they found it extremely difficult. First of all, the Spaniards had been extremely brutal in part of the conquest, and then they had continued to be brutalized, if you like, and not treat the Indians with dignity that was demanded. And they were very suppressed and distressed, if you like, a nation at that point. They were despairing, and in fact then, out of that despair, they had decided they were going to attack the Spaniards, and they were, in fact, planning a revolt against the Spaniards. And they outnumbered them 1,000 to 1 at that point. So they could even have wiped out the Spanish. And so you'll see in the next slide that this bishop, Zamaraga, he was a wholly beautiful bishop from reading and studying about him. He was called a protector of the Indians, and he endeavored to, uphold their dignity and to stop the persecution against them. And he was desperate to communicate back to Spain to tell of what was happening there, the persecutions that were happening against the Aztecs at this time. And in order to actually bring this message out, he had to actually sneak the message to the King Charles V at that time in Spain. He actually had to it was actually brought in a bit of bacon, wrapped in bacon, his message back, because it was so hard for him to get the message out. And he actually wrote, unless we get some intervention, unless God does something, this nation is lost. He wrote a fairly desperate sort of plea back to Charles V. Now, little did he realize that God himself would send his Blessed Mother within a couple of months of that letter. And this is an extraordinary response of heaven to his plea. And he sends, then the apparition happens. So I'll just tell you a little bit about Juan Diego, who's a visionary. He was one of the first converts with his wife, but at this point his wife had died, and he was about 57 years old. And he witnessed the apparition of Our Lady. She appeared to him 4 times in all. And initially, the first time she was surrounded by heavenly light on Tepeyac Hill. Tepeyac Hill was a place where there was a pagan temple. And of course, the Spaniards had destroyed a lot of the temples at this point, but it was where they worshipped a mother goddess. And it was on the outskirts of Mexico. So she came, spoke to him in his own language, his own native language. And then she gave him a commission to go and talk to the bishop. She wanted a chapel to be built. And so he goes, and you'll see the bishop didn't exactly believe his story. And she comes back to Our Lady again, and he says, look, get somebody who's more important and more a noble person, somebody that maybe the bishop might listen to. And then she says, no, my dear son, understand that I have many servants and messengers whom I could charge with the delivery of my message, but it is altogether necessary that it's you should be the one to undertake this mission. And that it is through you that, that my assistance, my wish will be accomplished, okay? And she told him again who she was. She was ever Virgin, Holy Mother of God who sent me. Then what happened? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So anyhow,
Yep.
here he goes back to Our Lady, and she says, fine, right. He goes back then to the bishop, and the bishop said, but I want a sign, okay, from Our Lady. So she tells them, he goes back, and Our Lady meets Our Lady, and she says, yes, we'll get you the sign. So tomorrow morning come, and you can bring the sign to the bishop. But then his uncle got really, really sick, so bad that he was on the point of death. It looks like something like an infectious disease, like smallpox, perhaps, because half the nation had been already wiped out by smallpox at this point. And then, so he tries to avoid. He wants to go and get a priest for his uncle for the last rites, and he tries to avoid Our Lady because he was afraid he would meet her and she would delay him. And so he goes to the eastern side of the hill of Tepeac, but she interacts and meets them, intercepts them and meets them. And then they have a discussion, and then she tells him his uncle is healed. At this very moment, in fact, it was the same timing, his uncle was healed. And not alone then was his uncle healed, but Our Lady revealed who she was to the uncle. So she said, I am, Santa Maria della Guadalupe. So that's how she titled herself to the uncle. And as you know, there's a shrine in Spain called Guadalupe. And then she tells him, then I go on to the next one. Sorry, yes, I should have just briefly tell you that she was consoling him because of his stress about his uncle and telling him not to worry, that his uncle was okay. So I'll skip that one now and go on the next one. So she sends him to the top of the hill to collect the roses, fine for the bishop. He goes up there, it's winter, the hill is frozen, and he doesn't expect, but he trusts and he goes when she does what he asks. He does what Our Lady asks him. So he collects all these beautiful roses. They look like Castilian roses. The Castilian roses hadn't yet been introduced to Mexico. They were roses that grew in Spain. And he sees all these beautiful roses, collects them, comes back to Our Lady. She arranges them in his Thelma. She with her own hands arranges them in his Thelma. So then he brings them to the bishop, and then the next slide, I'll just show you. He goes to the bishop, right? So he's delighted with himself. He has the sign for the bishop, and then he opens his cloak, and the flowers fall to the floor. But the bishop doesn't seem to be looking at the flowers, so he's a bit stunned because he himself doesn't see the image that's forming on his cloak on the Thelma. So the bishop falls to his knees, and there's some other ones. The bishop falls to his knees in adoration, and he pleads. He says, "I am so sorry. I beg forgiveness for not believing you." So that's Then the bishop straight away really believes and wants to have the chapel built that Our Lady asked, and they built a tiny little chapel, like 15 by 15 feet, and they did it in 14 days. And both the Aztecs and the Spaniards got together to do it. So already they started coming together to do the building of the chapel. So subsequently they had to get a bigger one and a bigger one. And then in 1709 they got this old one that's there, in front of the other one. But that eventually started to lean over, because in Mexico it was built on lakes, if you like. It's very marshy and wet, and it started to lean, and they had to close the church because of safety. But it's still there to this day. And they built the new basilica then, which can take 20,000 people, pilgrims. And so it's most extraordinary. I've never been there. I'd love to go there to Mexico to see it. They have conveyor belt apparently that takes you up. The image is behind the altar, high behind the altar, and the conveyor belts take you up with the image. And now I just want to show you here that why she was asking for a chapel to be built was that she wanted to show her son. She wanted to exalt her son, Jesus. She wanted to make it manifest, and she wanted to give him to the people. And so always, as you know, Our Lady always comes to bring us to Jesus. She, you know, always, you have no need to fear of devotion to Our Lady, because she brings you closer and closer to Jesus. And this is what she wanted to do for the Mexican, the Aztec Indians. And so she was going to then herself, with her beautiful words, show them her compassion, her love, her protection, her care for them, you know. So, right, and sorry, and I just go on to this one then. So then let's just go into some information on the Telma. As you know, this image, the Telma, that it was it's on the Telma, and it has survived almost 500 years, 488 now. It's, of course, as you know, it's not paint. We believe in the apparition, how it was given, but scientists have tried to uncover how it was done. There's no pigment, there's nothing to show it was a painting. And very unusual, they've only found quite recently, is that it's the same. If you look at it from the front or the back, that you can actually see, because it's not actually on the fabric. It was just only cactus fiber. That would it would only survive 15 years, normally maybe 30, if just you're protected better, but certainly not more than that, because it absorbs moisture and it would decay quickly. And they did an experiment, scientists in 1800, and artists came together and they created 2 images of Our Lady on the same type of fabric, and they only lasted 10 years, and they totally decayed and they had to be taken down. They become ugly, in fact. The colors totally disintegrated. They didn't keep their color at all. They went very dark. Because this image of Our Lady was 116 years exposed, without glass, without a cover. People were touching it with their hands, with rosary beads, and it was exposed to candles.
And it was lovely.
Yeah, and you know, so it was. They can't explain how it's still in existence, and it's still perfect, and the colors are still so perfect, you know. So now they're finding more and more. Maybe there's a reason why it's left to us. Obviously, there is a reason. Heaven has a reason why this image is still in existence and why it's still preserved by heaven. It's a heavenly. It can't be. Human beings can't explain why it's in existence. And so they've discovered it maintains a body temperature of the human body, 98.6. Okay. That's a new discovery. The discovery of the examination of the eyes is, I'll just go on the next slide for a second. The eyes are particularly now being studied. There's actually a book written on it, and they use ultra-red photography and digital imaging, and they've discovered they can see human people in the eyes, Juan Diego particularly, which is, if you can see there at the side, is the bearded man. And they recognize him as one of the images. Now, the eyes behave like human eyes, and so the images are in the same position you expect as if you. It's like as if Our Lady, when she stood in the room and she saw the people in that room at the moment the image was revealed, that the people are on her eyes. The images of those people are on both her eyes, and in one eye you can actually get clearer image of 13 or 14 people, which is a whole family now. So Dr. Tonesman, he's written a book on it, and he explains it in great detail. I had intended to show you a video initially, but the time wouldn't, I think, be allowed. But you can go and study it. It's amazing. It's amazing what's possible. You know, one of the eye specialists, Japanese, he fainted because he couldn't understand. Our Lady's eyes are like human eyes. I'm looking into human eyes. He couldn't grasp it. And there's a light reflection like in human eyes. So there's so much that, you know, in the Telma, that on the next one, 5, yeah, there's so much in the Telma. For the Aztecs, it was like a codex, and they could read every little symbol in this. And so from this, they could understand who Our Lady was. They could understand that she was greater than the sun. She's eclipsing the sun. She's standing on the moon. That's why the moon is so dark, because of the eclipsing of the sun, and that she's clothed, if you like, in that heavenly stars. 46 stars, in fact, are there dotted around her cloak, which is the color of her cloak suggests her royalty and her noble position. Everything. Then the sash she wears around her waist indicates that she is pregnant, and the gynecologists have confirmed that she's actually almost ready to deliver the baby. So she's carrying in her womb the Christ child. And this is one of the only apparitions we know where this happens. So she's given a dignity to all unborn life, I believe, through this image. And she has become, as you know, the patroness of the unborn. Pope John Paul II called her patroness of the unborn, and a lot of pro-life organisations are dedicated and consecrated to her under this title. So we are as well, our group, as Medela. Well, then you can see also that she is a virgin, because she has the hair, everything she reveals to them exactly who she is, you know, and they understand it, and they understand that she's not God, and they know from the flower over her womb that she's actually carrying God, bearing him, and because of the jasmine 4 petals flower over her womb, and so they were able to read it and understand the message, and then it's most extraordinary. So everything has a meaning for them. The flowers. Now, something unusual that's come up only lately. If you take the points of the stars and you and take away the image, and they can create music from it, from the points, and they can get this beautiful heavenly music. And I don't have it now. I'm not good at the technology to bring it here, but you can actually get heavenly music coming from putting all that together. Yeah, it's beautiful. And and I'll just go on the next one for you. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, perhaps that was everything. The position of her hands, the way she's position of her foot, that I think she's dancing. Sorry, I have to watch the time. Yes, okay. Okay, so I won't dwell on it too long. So if you're worried about the time, yes. So we continue. And she identifies herself with her privileges, and you know, her beautiful privileges which the church has acknowledged, her perpetual virginity, her motherhood of God, her respect for the church. You can see that in the way she did get the sign to the bishop and respected the church, and her glorious assumption that she's the woman of revelation, the woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, you know, and bearing the Christ child. So just go on the next one for you. So I leave you with some of her beautiful words, you know, because I think they were so touching. There's such tenderness and love in these words, you know, great time to really digest them, you know, and reflect on them. So she is the merciful mother of all who are united in this land, of all mankind, of all who love me, who cry to me, of those who have confidence in me. Here I will hear their weeping and their sorrows. I will remedy and alleviate their suffering, necessities and misfortunes. Am I not he who am your mother? Are you not under my shadow and protection? Are you not the fountain? Are you not the fountain? Am I not the fountain of your joy? Are you not in the folds of my mantle, in the crossing, in the cradle of my arms? Beautiful, beautiful. So many words she said 1 year ago. So beautiful, and such tenderness and such love there. And I believe that she has brought together two cultures, two very different cultures, Spanish culture and the Aztec culture, and they were so opposed, and they could not, and about to engage in war and conflict with each other. And then suddenly here comes this apparition of our heavenly intervention, heaven-sent image, and here you have this beautiful, successful integration of those two cultures, such as never happened. And then the massive conversions immediately. You know, within 7 years, 9 million people coming to the church, you know. So it's an extraordinary story. So I think that it's a story for our time because it defies science. Okay, so people don't trust in science totally. They now, I think, with the COVID virus and that, they may actually be challenged by the trust in science totally. But I think. I think, you know, that it's for our time. It also shows that Our Lady brought forward the lay apostolate there, that her messenger was Juan Diego, and he was so needed in this conversion of Mexico, because he had the language, he was able to explain to the people, the missionaries knew him. They were actually converted without ever seeing the missionaries, believe it or not. They, just by the image and hearing the story from the lay group around him. And then they came and they wanted to be accepted into the church, whereas before they had rejected it totally. So it was a beautiful, beautiful story of conversion, a beautiful story of love, of the mercy and love of God, reaching out, a lady reaching out to people that were stressed, troubled, really wounded at this point in their history, So I leave you with that. I just only want to encourage you to study maybe further and to see that we could use it. We could, I think, reach out with this beautiful message and in the new evangelization of this nation. The John Paul II, as you know, he said that from the shrine of Our Lady of Guadalupe, he felt that a new spring, a new evangelization would, if you like, spread. He actually said those words. And, he had great love for Our Lady of Guadalupe. And so I think, so I think I'll leave you with that, that we, sorry, okay. So I'll leave you with that we can use I think we can bring forward our image and tell our story of this extraordinary story. It's still in existence, still this miracle still in existence, and make it known in this side of the world. Okay. Thank you so much. Okay.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rita, for such an informative talk there on Our Lady of Guadalupe. And as you actually said, Our Lady gently guides us always towards her son, Jesus. That's the whole aim. So thank you so much. We could have given you a lot more time, but unfortunately we're against the clock. So thank you so much for that, Dr. Rita.